Right, I did. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 34 of TOSH Talks. I really need to start splitting this from the Antiquity series, though, even though Jack seems to have lost a bit of interest in making that 7 seasons, but I'm going to force him to carry on anyway. Um, anyway, today we have the topic of does feminism or do feminists have a point? Which, of course, is Joz's title for his little slideshow. Big slideshow. He's going to show us a little bit later. Firstly, though, obviously, I'll introduce the panel. So, along for this ride, it's the natural co-host. It's Tharium. Hello, Tharium.
Hello there.
And we also have someone from the community who just decided that he would join us in this particular chat, and that is LM. So, hello, LM.
Hello, good evening, everybody.
Excellent, excellent. And of course, pretty much everyone in the Discord is welcome to come on these shows. You just have to let me know, and you can come on. We've had a few people on, like Jag and things like that, so the offer is there. You just need to let me know. But obviously, the person who I think you're going to hear the voice of the most today is Joz. So hello, Joz.
Yeah, I don't come on unless I have a lot to talk about,
Mm.
and you're going to hear my voice a lot.
Yeah. So as we said, we were saying before we started that obviously the "Does Feminism Have a Point" title is a bit clickbaity, and especially with the feminist people can see on screen. Well, I suppose it's better for you to introduce, but it's not quite the 2014 era feminism we're talking about, is it?
Yeah, it's sort of something that I've been thinking about for quite a while, and you were asking for topic suggestions, and I threw it in as kind of a joke. Didn't really expect it to win the quiz that you did. So looks like that's what we're talking about then.
I love how you call a standard poll a quiz.
Or whatever. I lost the word. Yeah, a poll.
I don't. Well, I think it's interesting because kind of talking about feminism and how it's terrible or how it's doo-doo, I think, as Layman used to put it on YouTube. It's been kind of a dead topic for a few years now. Because as much as Me Too had quite a lot of cultural sway, I just didn't see many people that I knew take it seriously. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the thesis. Well, my main thoughts have been influenced by two women. There's Louise Perry and Mary Harrington. Probably Mary Harrington's more famous among sort of Twitter anons. They both were on, I think it's Chris Williamson's podcast. And he's a sort of like manosphere guy originally. But a lot of the stuff that they say about how modernity and feminism itself affects women in a bad way makes a lot of sense. And I think it's a bit of a blind spot that we have, to be honest. That sort of young right-wing men have is on how it affects women, and obviously if you want to have a wife, if you want to have daughters, then it's something that you will have to think about.
Portrait Seal saying, "Don't forget Kirby as well." Surely she was influential.
Well, that's why I said wife. Well, and honestly, she was somebody who was interested in what these women had to say on podcasts, and kind of we've talked about it a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean it's well, we always go on about incentives, especially in the Discord. I don't. There's a lot of talk about the fertility rate as well, and I'm honestly, as time goes on, I see it less of a big deal.
Everything is like a 10th order consequence.
Yeah, that's fair.
What was I going to say? I think another thing is that people take on sort of modern liberal priors quite a lot without even realizing it. Like, there's a lot of people who criticize women and feminism by essentially criticizing the fact that women act like women. And if you're getting angry about women acting like women, then you're not misogynistic enough because you're expecting women to act like men subconsciously. So there is a level of misogyny where you're like, oh, stupid women, what are they doing? Why are they acting like that? But you have to go further and say, well, no, they do act like that. That's what you'd expect, right? And deal with it.
Yeah. Well, as we always say, it's all down to incentives, isn't it? I think at this point, though, well, I, I don't know how big your what's it called,
Yeah,
PowerPoint
well,
is.
well, as soon
How
as I realised that I was going to have to talk about this,
you just kept
I
having things to write.
yeah, so I think it was this weekend. I was just thinking, I was like, right, I need to actually kind of.
Oh, you were at me in the Discord saying, right, I was bored. Here's a snippet of it, and it was about 3 full-page
Oh,
screenshots
no,
or
that
something
was
of
most of it.
notes.
That was most of it. I
Yeah.
kind of
Okay.
got to the point where I had to organise my thoughts because, as I said, it's something I've been thinking about for a while, but not coherently.
Yeah.
And this presentation was knocked together very quickly, so it's going to be a bit schizophrenic.
Well, I mean, I'll put it on screen then, and
Yeah, it's words on a page.
we can. Well, I suppose this will be more of a let's straighten out these thoughts with you.
hmm
Yeah.
As I said, the title's very clickbaity.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, that's fine. We've already got more comments than we did in Monday's stream, so I call that a success.
Yeah. Well, that was the point.
So yes, does
Okay.
feminism have a point?
Okay, so are you sharing what?
I
'Cause
am.
obviously, all I've got is my one monitor, so I
Y-
can't see what you're doing.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm sharing it on screen now. Yeah.
Okay.
There you
So
go.
I guess where I wanted to start was to kind of discuss like what men and women are like and the sort of life cycle of men and women. And I'm talking men and women throughout all time, not just modern men and women. So if we try and keep those as separate ideas, because I guess the kind of thesis of this is that modern men and women are like an aberration historically. It wasn't always like this.
Yeah.
So as I said, this is going to be a bit schizophrenic. It's just random notes on the page. So I think for men, we're quite familiar with the sort of life cycle of a man or life timeline of a man's life. Um, you start off as a boy, in which you spend your whole time learning and growing and sort of thinking about your future. And then there's a stage that I don't think really applies to women. And tell me if you disagree here. But for men across time, there was a sort of period as a young man, maybe in your late teens, early 20s, that you are sort of expected to quote unquote be a man, like adventure, go on adventures, like do all these manly things that are not being a husband and a father, which is a stage that you would probably get to as a bit older, but there might be a bit of an overlap. And I feel like in modern times, this confusion is where you get midlife crises, in that some men especially skip from being a boy to being a husband and a father, and realize in their 40s that they never really had this phase in their life, and they try and recapture it by buying a motorbike or sleeping with the secretary or something stupid.
Getting a hair transplant.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's funny you say that because obviously, I assume that's a bit of a dig at Miles.
Oh well, yeah. I mean,
he's done
he's
his
just a weirdo.
adventuring. He is a
Isn't
weirdo.
he like 22 or something, and he's already getting a hair transplant?
He's younger than us. Yeah.
I mean, I think he was doing that just for a laugh because they're like, I've got money now. So I mean, that is another thing that
It was all the stress from from being in a Taliban jail for that. So,
but you can see how being a sort of, I don't know, a will to power, adventuring, fighting man and a husband and father are not really possible to do at the same time necessarily.
Or even just like you'd go become an apprentice, go off, live with the master,
make your
learn
fortune.
Yeah.
Well, I basically what I'm thinking with the young man phase is for a lot of people that just seems to be moved to London.
Nowadays, well, yes, and this is something I'll come on to, that women don't really have this phase in their life historically. They go straight from girl to wife.
Yeah.
There's no, and a lot of modernity or modern feminism is pushing women to try and act like young men.
Yeah.
And this is another reason why historically there were large age gaps between husbands and wives, because that age gap is it's the length of time that the husband spent being a man.
Yeah. Well, especially if they weren't able to be a suitable husband. I guess the young man phase is what helps them.
And as part
have
of
the wisdom
marriage,
to be a father. Yeah.
as part of being a wife, the woman will rightly tame him to an extent. And that's the Beauty and the Beast story is a exaggeration of that. But you can't have a sort of fighting, adventuring man around young children or when she's pregnant or whatever.
No.
And it gets a bit confused again in the modern day, but we'll get onto that. And then finally, which is not something I'm really going to consider that much, is that as old people, you are supposed to be sort of, the father uses sort of hard power, like he lays down the law, and the old woman is softer, but she still holds a lot of power in an extended family.
You never met my grandmas, did you?
I've heard stories. I know my own grandmother's.
Yeah.
So, on this topic of power, I mean, this might sound a little bit Marxist, but I couldn't really think of another way of framing it. So the way that women and men, express power full stop and then have power over each other. Again, this is a sort of throughout time thing. It's not necessarily just a modern thing. But for women, it's sort of informal, soft power through relationships, and especially, and this is obvious if you go into a mixed school. Access to being cool, I suppose, and also access to information about what everyone's up to. I mean, maybe social media has kind of replaced women's gossip groups. Women are very nosy on social media. I mean, we all know women's like FBI skills on Facebook, finding people.
Oh, the I remember when I was in Lords, and one of the girls who came along with the group, we just happened to meet up with a group from another diocese, and one of the girls from our group was just like, "Oh yeah, sorry, I know you quite well because I've been Facebook stalking you. Just said it outright," and then they actually became friends. Weirdly enough, but yeah, it's women will be quite open that they're just like, yeah, I will block everything on my social media. You'll only see the things I really want you to. But if you're not very good with that privacy aspect, I will know everything about you.
and you see that all this female power has got nothing to do with society and sort of public life. It's got nothing to do with law. It's got nothing to do with politics. It's got nothing
I
to
see
do.
what you mean. Yeah, it's
more men have. Yeah, go on.
It's more about the personal politics rather than the kind of politics of the country. Or
yes, it's
region.
I guess the original politics. It's sort of jockeying for status.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas men have formal power. I am a lord. I am a mayor. I have explicit power over you as your manager at work. And historically, obviously, men fight the wars. Men have physical strength. They have martial skill. Law is a very male thing. It is a hard rule that you have to follow. And historically, women, yes, women have got transported to Australia, and women have been hanged for bad things. But it's not really something you think about when you think of people who break the law and people who write the law, historically speaking.
Yeah,
I mean, still today, prison sentences for the same crime. Women
exactly.
will get less.
Exactly, and it feels weird to be applying the law to women.
in a sense, I guess.
And if you're treating men and women as equal, then you're a liberal.
Yeah.
And by equal, I don't mean equal's probably the wrong word. I mean equivalent, I suppose. As the same.
Equality under the law's fine, but I know why you don't like using the word equal. Yeah.
As the same, I suppose.
I mean, it was a thing that I guess made me not liberal quite early on then, because I remember there was an argument about rape in law in Britain. You by definition need a
very silly law. Yeah.
You by definition need a penis.
And
I was like, well, no, that does make sense, and there is kind of an equivalent. Yeah, there is an equivalent of serious sexual assault from women.
But if a woman gets a stick.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but that would be serious sexual assault, and
okay.
I think there are equivalent sentences, but I don't see the need to change the rape law.
There is a sort of metaphysical, and there are things attached to rape historically that are not the same as a woman attacking a man.
I think basically why rape should be worse is because of the risk of pregnancy that comes from it.
Well, yeah, and as I say, that there's historical power associated with it, I suppose. Maybe power's the wrong word.
Normally, when the man's doing it, it's more domineering. Normally,
yes.
When a woman's doing it, it's more
Wow.
Sly.
She's got you.
I,
She's got you drunk, and you don't know
Are
what you're
you,
doing.
are
Yeah.
you saying that
Hmm.
poison is a woman's weapon, sir?
yeah,
No
and
professional comment.
Oh, there you go.
I sort of started thinking about this, like men and male and female power and this is interesting in how men and women have power over each other. So, for example, men have power over men via just direct force, or indirect force. So historically, it's just how strong you are physically,
Or how
how
many mates you can get to beat them up.
exactly,
Yeah.
and this is something that bizarrely, I went to visit the Battle of Culloden battlefield a few years ago. Culloden in Scotland, near Inverness, and what's interesting is that the graves of the men who died there are basically where they fell on. So you can see the battle lines as essentially where the
Oh,
gravestones are.
right.
And so this is a battle between the British Army and the sort of redcoat era, and all the British regiments are laid out. When the men fell, it's all like this is this, Second Cumberland Company of Foot or whatever, and the Lincolnshire Fusiliers. But on the Scottish side, it's just, Clan MacDonald, Clan Mac whatever, and it's literally Big Chief MacDonald and however many men he could bring.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with sort of the law or like conscription or joining a formal military standing army. It is literally just me and the boys.
Bigger sticks, yeah.
It's just me and the boys as an
My
ideology.
cousins, yeah.
Yeah, literally. And that definitely shows. It really struck me the difference, sort of between the two ways of doing things. And obviously, the English absolutely crushed them.
Oh my god, so based.
Yeah, and yeah, it just made me think like it's definitely a difference between a modern style and an older style there.
Well,
And
we might. I feel like there's quite a bit of a vibe shift going on at the moment where we might be almost returning to tradition in that way. A lot of people, women in America even voted this way, seem to want the, strong man, actually get things done type of man. Like, it was Milei in Argentina for a start. It was Bukele in.
but it's not just a strong man;
Ecuador,
it's of somebody that you know and you have a personal
Yeah.
relationship with.
He's
Sure.
part of your tribe.
Well, yeah, that too, I suppose.
And a feudal relationship like the Scottish clans is a personal relationship, and even mostly a familial relationship as well.
Yeah.
Like it's man to man. It's nothing to do with some nebulous state. And yeah, so women have
Yeah.
power over men, obviously, by
I think I was
gone.
just going to say that's part of why the Highland clearances struck so deep. I think in Scotland is because it was like the clan chiefs who just thought, nah, like sending off all of their people underneath them who sort of viewed them as family, but the clan chiefs thought, now I'll get money instead and send them away.
Yeah, there were. Yeah, obviously, it's not just as simple as England versus Scotland. There were a load of obviously
Yeah.
lowland, particularly Scots, that fought
Mhm.
alongside the English, and there were English Jacobites as well. So yeah, moving on. So obviously, women have power over men via their attractiveness and their ability to produce children and raise them well. I mean, everything
Sure.
that men like about women and will keep men around is downstream from that.
Well, physical features, I imagine.
But
what
also,
you mean
are they insane or not?
The crazy to hot scale.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean,
But like, if your girlfriend is fucking nuts, then you're not going to want to have children with her because you don't trust her around children.
yeah, I get what you mean.
So inevitably you will be more inclined to leave. It's all averages, So men have power over women by essentially providing safe security or safety for them and their children. This is a bit harder to sort of think about. Well, a lot of the time it's why women don't leave to abusive relationships, right?
Yeah.
Think of the children, and it's also, can I actually do any better? Because even though he may be violent, he's also providing a sense, a feeling of safety.
Yeah. Well, this is. Well, you first, Tharium.
And abusers like that, they always
Yeah,
often tend to turn
manipulate.
it around into why do you make me do this and stuff.
Mhm.
It's a common one.
But I mean, also the fact that, and this might be something I'll think about later, is that men in the modern day are by and large not violent.
No.
So the sort of men who are violent are the sort of men who would always have been violent,
Yeah.
no matter when they were born.
I mean, I'd say generally speaking, most men have never been overly violent
Well,
like that.
well, there's a whole bit in Fight Club about that, wasn't there? Where men have become so weak, if you even try and start a fight and actually let the other person win it, it's basically impossible. Like you couldn't. Like there was the priest walking past with his books or whatever, and the guy with the hose tried to spray him down, and the priest like shoved the big guy at one point. Now, he didn't do anything back, but the priest was like, "Oh, no, I think it was a priest, or it might have been a guy in a suit. Doesn't really matter." But he's like, "Oh no, sorry," and then just kind of walks off swiftly. It is very much like, yeah. I was going to say a problem, especially with providing security and safety, and I guess with men having dominance as well. It's all outsourced to the
Yeah.
government.
Exactly, and that's something I'll talk about later as well. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So this is something that we don't really think about very much as men, is that women and other women is something that is hugely important to them and takes up a lot of them thinking about it. Like it's pretty easy for women to have power over men.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
in terms of female competition, it's all about fashionableness. And this is why, we laugh at it when I was at university, and I was like, why are these girls dressing so like that? You know what I mean? And
Sadly.
well, if you were a real man, you'd say happily. But what they always say, oh, it's for my friends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I don't really believe you though. But they all say, oh, it's for my friends,
yeah.
it's for my friends, it's for my friends.
I mean, so much of women's fashion is stuff that no straight men care about.
Yeah.
But
No, the really long fingernails. What men like that?
but it's downstream from that. So
Yeah,
obviously having long fingernails is a sign of fertility, is the healthiness. If you can grow long fingernails, you're got strong, keratin production. The same with shiny hair, stuff like that. But you're right that there's sometimes a conflict between what men like and what women think is cool.
Well, there was, well, there is. I always remember a theory from AA where women will effectively start social trends that men aren't interested in to effectively put women down this social trend that will make them less attractive.
Short hair,
short hair,
like the body positivity stuff. Yes.
Yeah, amazing.
Or gay men doing it so that straight men don't have any attractive women, so they just go, fine, I'll be gay.
The system works.
But so I've kind of come around to the point where, okay, like it is for their friends, and I get it now. And the fact that you find it attractive is sort of, it's related, but it's also not the same. Like, yes, you find women attractive on a night out because they're dressed up like that, but it's not actually for you specifically, which drives men insane.
Yeah.
This is why I say it's a bit of a blind spot. So I wanted to sort of work through a bit of history. The photograph that I have here is from a TV show called Outlander, which is set in Scotland in the 1700s. Obviously, so there's a lot of women here doing, I think they're soaking wool in something to make it waterproof. But what I do know is that the women in this are a real reenactment group. So the actresses that are used here in the show, and they actually do this. So it is a real reconstruction of something that actually happened, and you can see
one thing. I always think more movies and television shows should just make use of reenactment groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've got all the equipment and stuff they need already. They know what they're doing.
I'm pretty sure that happened in just as a tangent. I'm pretty sure that happened in a Star Wars show. They just said does anybody have any Star Wars reenactors in the area?
Well, it's happened in a few. I think it happened in The Mandalorian and
yeah.
Shame they couldn't get good writers.
Yeah, so it's Everything else,
Yeah.
very good. It's just the writing which is bad, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Because they
So
have a lot of potential there.
In a society like this, I mean, you can see the houses in the background. It's pretty like medieval,
Scottish.
if not Stone Age. Like it's basic.
Very, very early manor lords. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Tier 1 house. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do men and women do as the sort of blue jobs and pink jobs? Men do anything that needs physical strength beyond a certain amount because women physically can't do it. Men do anything involving danger and pressure because there's more chance of surviving it. Frankly.
Well, that
And
and if they die,
well, actually,
one
you're right. Yeah,
penis
the
can go
women,
around.
the women are more valuable, I suppose, in that sense.
Yeah.
It's less risky to lose a man than it is to lose a woman in the village.
Yeah.
With with the harvest, the men would always they'd be the ones with the scythes, and then the women and kids would be
well,
behind.
I don't think that's necessarily
Piling it
true. I think a lot of the time women did do
Scything.
harvesting fields
Maybe.
and things.
Oh yeah, but it was a joint thing. Like you
Yeah.
generally have the men with the scythes, and then the women and the kids would be bundling it all up behind.
Sure, like the point is that there isn't a very clear
Yeah.
definition. There isn't a definition of blue jobs and
No.
pink jobs
Yeah,
that's done based on ideology.
yeah.
It's all done based on pragmatism.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you know, women will do things communally because they enjoy it. Like this is an example here. I mean, they're singing a song to keep the beat as they're sort of padding this this soaked bit of wool, which is obviously quite heavy.
Yeah.
It takes 10 of them to move it around. So they're doing it
So, yeah.
communally. And you know that obviously they're doing stuff that involves small children. That small children can just be around, and it won't be dangerous for them.
I think this is one of the points Mary Harrington has made, is that you get sort of in the conservative view these days, you have this opinion that women should just be housewives
Yes.
and not work, when historically that was never the case. Women always had jobs and stuff that they were doing.
This is exactly where I'm going with this.
Okay, yeah.
And go on, Harry.
Well, I was thinking, well, it's just more examples of what you mean. Kingdom Come Deliverance, which obviously the second game's are, but I'm not quite up to a point where I can comment on the historical accuracy of that one. But I know in the first one, you know, you had things like grave diggers. That'd be a man because, you know, men are okay with being socially excluded. Because he wasn't a grave digger, sorry, he was a hangman.
Execution.
Right.
Yeah, executioner. But obviously he was an outcast because, you know, killing people's bad in Christianity. But he you know, he says, "Oh, I can live with it." But there's a whole mission where you get a woman for him, who's a woman who lost her husband and couldn't do the job that he had. I can't remember what it was, but it was one of those dangerous ones.
He killed her husband.
Oh, he killed her husband.
Her husband was a criminal. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was it. But yeah, but she couldn't survive anymore, so she went with him because she was outcast because of the criminality as well. But then, having said that, you've got the men as the huntsmen, tanners, things like that. Women are in the markets; they're bathing men along with other services if you pay for it.
I mean, just another video game analogy, Manor Lords that you were talking about.
Yeah,
I quite like that because the jobs that you assign are assigned as families.
The household, yeah.
Yes, so a household are blacksmiths.
Yeah. So
a household are farmers.
Yeah, exactly, and they can be foragers as well. And it's not really dealt between men and women, but then when you put them on the stalls, it's all as a family as well. It's
So
good game, that.
there's a sort of equality here. Again, I put equality of value question mark because I'm not really sure how to frame it. But society or community or whatever is made up of productive households where both the men and the women are economically productive.
I mean, we could go on John's trad tax point from here. How you know, you should really tax a household rather than individuals, which the state wants to do.
But that's not fair on people who don't have households. Well,
There's someone in the comments saying the way women worked in the past was different to the modern world. I don't think that kind of. But the way men work is different to the past as well.
Different,
Yes, exactly. So, just a few thoughts about this kind of pre-industrial village idea. And by pre-industrial, it's kind of any point in history, barring certain periods where you get urbanism, like the Roman Empire or something.
Yeah.
Or like medieval London or something. basically where there's no middle class.
Yeah.
It could be any point from the Paleolithic up to kind of 1800 in England.
Yeah, probably more 1700, I'd argue, but
But there's
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
pockets of it. I mean,
yeah. Oh yeah.
a lot of my thinking about this has also come from visiting Ireland, like rural Ireland, and I've joked that Ireland feels like a Iron Age society that's been dragged into the modern world.
Oof.
But the
Yeah.
way that they want to live in these villages is not compatible with modern life, and it's sad.
Yeah.
And I would prefer it if they did live how they want to live. Yes, so the
Wow.
way that men organize in these societies would be through some sort of state, whether that's a lord of the manor, whether it's a mayor, whether it's a chief or whatever. But that's an official title. There's politics around that, which is for men. There's military as well, and it's all about the sort of official nature of things. Whereas for women, it's all via, friend groups, family, particularly church. Even though churches, obviously, when Catholicism, as all the way up until now, has only been male priests, and Anglicanism until pretty recently was only male priests. The sort of organization around it seemed to have been done by women mostly.
Yeah, well, we've definitely talked about that before. Especially, I'm just thinking of my local parish church. The parish group's mostly women. There's men in there, obviously. Not just the priest. I mean, but
And
it's definitely women who are the driving force. from what I know.
again, not in Catholicism, but in Protestant sects, the vicar's wife is a high status position.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean,
Um,
when they started getting women priests over in the Anglican Church, quite a few of them converted to Catholicism. So you've still got the priest wife in
Yeah.
some Catholic churches. Gone.
But even with the Catholics, like you say, women play a big role in organising all that.
because it's community.
Yeah, and like
Um,
all the old pagan kings, I mean, the thing that really converted them to Catholicism was their wives picked it up.
Especially true in Rome, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the view of particularly sort of more Anglo-Saxon and Norse paganism on women is that women are essentially magical.
Yeah.
And that magic is for women, and magic involves sort of controlling. No, I'm serious.
No, I know.
That magic is for controlling people. That's what you use magic for, is sort of warping reality.
Yeah.
And we all know that women are good at controlling people and warping the reality that you see.
Does
That's a true thing.
Oof.
why hasn't Duncan gained this ability?
Well, that's why he said to me, "Oh, in previous eras, I'd be
Exactly,
worshipped as a
yeah.
god."
Yeah.
Like, it's. Have
Do you
you
wanna
guys
say
seen
what you-
the Northman, the Robert Eggers film?
No,
Yeah,
I've
good.
not.
So you should see it. It's amazing.
Alright.
But
Yeah.
there's the priest in that, and it's not something you notice unless you are looking for it. The priest, the sort of mad pagan priest, is wearing a dress.
All right.
Yeah, the sort of
Okay.
shaman guy. He's
Yeah.
wearing a dress. Like, he's wearing these sort of bronze discs on his chest, which you sort of associate with like sort of shield maidens.
Right. Ah,
Because he's magical, he is therefore
a
feminine.
woman. Oh, right.
And obviously masculinity is about fighting people to Vikings, and it's dying in battle.
But he didn't do that. Take it.
Yes, so for the Vikings, dying at this period in the young man adventuring, fighting, competing, is the best. That gets you into Valhalla.
But if you go past it, you have to be a patriarch.
Well, if you die, yeah, or if you die in your bed as an old man, that's shameful.
Oof.
So talking a bit about, obviously, dating and marriage is a topic that is talked about a lot with respect to feminism in the modern time, and this is something that I think Louise Perry talks about quite a lot in her more recent discussion with Chris Williamson. That the idea that you have to sort of ask girls out randomly is a very strange thing historically, and we all know that it feels unnatural and wrong. You would be set up in a sort of semi-arranged scenario if you lived in a
Well,
pre-modern
yeah.
village.
Also, in like these villages, you'd have probably known all these girls like since you were kids.
Presumably. And I think
Whereas,
we're not used to the lack of children.
yeah,
Like, well, we are used
yeah,
to the
yeah,
lack of children.
yeah.
We don't live in a world where if you go to a sort of
Hmm.
nice rural village, there's kids everywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
And I know for me, I grew up in a small rural village, and there was 3 or 4 boys and a couple of girls my age,
yeah.
and there would
Same.
be tens, dozens.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking back to Kingdom Come Deliverance again. Henry's main love interest is a girl from the village that saved him from when he was going to be killed.
Mhm.
Before that, right at the start of the game, his girlfriend was a girl working with the Tavern family. Was part of the Tavern family. And I think right at the start he looks at the bum of the girl who he eventually turns into his love interest when the game starts, and even his father says basically stop staring at her ass. I get it, it's good. Like clearly would be approving of it, but this the thing is, kind of the other way around now. These villagers will have known each other for all their lives, but obviously nowadays it's oh hi mum and dad, here's my girlfriend. And then
Yeah,
they
and
need
the
to
idea
get to know
that,
her.
like, obviously planning a wedding myself,
Mhm.
a lot of it is you sort of think like, why the hell am I spending so much money putting on a party for
Mhm. Mhm.
my friends and family and my future wife's friends and family, and you sort of have to accept that it's not about you, which feels weird because it's your wedding,
Hmm.
and it's people.
Yeah.
People struggle with that.
It's
Um,
it's something that I find really hard to get across to people, that like weddings really aren't for you at all, really.
Mm.
Um,
and yeah, and it was always, and the weddings are like a leftover from a bygone era. I'm going to be using the word cargo cult a lot as we go on, but
oh yeah, yeah, I know what you
it
mean. Now,
feels like we're sort of worshipping something that we don't understand and have
Mm.
left behind. And I understand people like Zen, for example, who says he doesn't understand the point in it
Yeah. I
because,
mean,
yeah,
I have heard from people though who never planned to get married, and they were together in a couple for years, and then they just decide, why not? And something about it, there's like some sort of magic in it, and it's sort of they feel like after getting married, even though they thought it was pointless, they feel like, oh yeah, this is more important now.
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
I guess that stops it being cargo culty, but in terms of the cargo cult, the point is that it doesn't actually work. but,
sure.
but I know what you mean.
Yeah, I'm kind of focusing on the idea that you're worshipping something that's outside your understanding,
Yes. Yes.
in a sort of strange way.
Well, I mean, to put it in the Catholic perspective, the whole point of marriage is that it's a sacrament. Like, it's more about God than anything. The two
Yeah.
of you becoming one.
Yeah, and I guess a point that I want to make about this is that after a sort of medieval peasant, wedding, the women are still not 100% dependent on their husband's work, as we've talked about before. Both of their work is important, and neither of them can survive without the other.
Yeah.
And that's really not true nowadays.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to have a stay-at-home wife and you earn enough, like, it's all about how much you earn, like just the number. It's not about
Yeah.
who's making my socks, who's lighting the fire, who's chopping the firewood. Like,
I think it was also supposed to be that if a husband threw out his wife, she was supposed to get the dowry back.
yeah, well, that's part of the reason that we have
Yeah.
engagement rings, and
Yeah.
is that the diamond obviously is very valuable, and if for some reason your marriage fails or he dies or something, then she can at least sell the ring if it's worth a month's salary, which is the sort of historical, the kind of historical idea, which is, and women can get very precious about how much their ring is worth.
Mm.
Yeah.
Which isn't a
But
good sign.
fundamentally, I mean, the women did give up, her stuff into the family, and sort of her
Yeah.
rights as a public person. But she has this informal power that we've talked about. And obviously, a woman becoming a wife is a higher status in this sort of village.
Why while we're on this subject, it's something that was asked of Jordan Peterson years ago, and he never had an answer for it. Why do you think women take the man's name?
I thought. I mean, I could be being very cynical here, but I heard somebody say that it's so that the man has ownership over his children. Because if, in theory, if your wife cheated on you and the child isn't yours, you can at least give it your name, and that because it is yours.
Right.
Whether it's your, because we've kind of gone back to caveman times where it's about DNA.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Maybe.
But if you live in a sort of Anglo medieval society, like, your name is important. So if you give your name to somebody, then they are part of your family.
Let's go back to Kingdom Come Deliverance. Your players are, spoilers for anyone who's not played that 7-year-old game. But you do turn out to be actually a lord's bastard, but you were brought up by the blacksmith.
Bastards is another one. I mean, it's very Game of Thrones, but naturalizing them, it doesn't change their parentage. It just involves adopting them into your family.
Which can
adoption.
Yeah.
Gone.
Well, that can completely change their outcome. Again, Game of Thrones. Jon Snow goes to the war because he's a bastard, but
and even in, I mean, it's a bit different in Roman times. Like, it's more of a pagan morality.
Yeah.
And they place less of importance on inheritance. But even so, if you wanted to pass on an inheritance to a man, you would adopt him.
Yep.
Like, emperors did that all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd adopt fully grown adult men.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he is my son. So if we move on a bit to the sort of Industrial Revolution era, we're getting more urban now.
Yeah.
This is such a huge shift, not just in technology. I mean, it's brought about by technology, but it's such a huge shift in, like, what is a person.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of discussion about it at the time. And so, basically, man jobs stop. They're getting abstracted. They're no longer in the home. They are just about using whatever skills you have in an industry, and that implies that you have skills. And if all that you have is your strength, then you go and be a dock worker or a factory worker or something. But it implies a sort of educational or an importance of education to get skills in order to be more valuable in an industry. And as I say, it's very abstracted from the sort of village work, which is all very centered around your household and your home.
Instead of just shoveling sacks from your cart to the pantry or whatever, you're using a forklift.
Well, it's not necessarily just that. It's just it's not about survival anymore.
Oh, it's about, a
wage.
plenty.
Yeah, it's abstracted. It's now a wage. And this is something that made me laugh. Like, you hear sometimes from sort of idiot reactionaries, like, peasants only work certain days of the year.
The rest of the time it's frolicking in the meadows with ale.
This is the exact point. This is the exact point that's the response to that is, well, what is work?
Yeah.
And
I know.
your work isn't just to earn a wage as a peasant. I mean, you might do a bit for the local church or whatever, but most of it is to do with survival and actually having a comfortable life.
Well, there's still if you go to some really poor parts like Eastern Europe and stuff, you still do get some villages and stuff that are basically still medieval, and every day is work.
Yeah.
Even
it's funny, I've been watching on YouTube, there's this YouTuber called Outdoor Boys where it's just this Mormon
guy.
Oh,
I love that guy. Yeah.
Everyone seems to have found him recently. He's great. But there was one where he took his sister, who's not very outdoorsy, like, out into the Alaskan wilderness with literally wolves howling at the distance.
Yeah.
And she is sort of, like, kind of a bit useless, and he has to do everything. But obviously it's nice, and he expects that, and he's nice to her and looks after her. But you do think, like, if he wasn't there, she would be dead. And it really puts it into perspective compared to the sort of modern idea that we have about male and female relationships. And he is literally spending all afternoon chopping firewood so that they survive the night.
Yeah. And she can't do anything. without.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
she can do stuff. It will just take more effort from him, I imagine.
But
to
yeah, I mean,
supervise
I
it.
don't.
It's-
He's taking her
No,
for the
Yeah,
experience.
yeah.
obviously.
I'm not. Well, my toxic trait is, I could definitely do all that stuff Outdoor Boys does.
It doesn't look that hard.
The thing
It's like-
is, I have wildcat before, but I did it with a proper temper. This guy just brings a tarpaulin and puts a couple of logs up and makes a decent shelter. It's nuts.
He's a nutcase, but it's such a good channel,
He's-
and he does a lot of wholesome stuff with his sons as
Or-
well, which is
Yeah,
really
he
nice.
does.
Yeah.
You know what his
Yeah.
job is when he's not doing that. He's a,
He was
Yeah.
no, he doesn't. Well, he wasn't. He's not a lawyer anymore, but he was.
he was a
sort of
lawyer though.
a small time lawyer. Yeah.
But, yeah, it's nuts.
Or the original primitive technology channel.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like-
What else? But
Yeah, like-
yes, so women's jobs in this sort of more
Yeah.
middle class society now are basically stay at home and run the household, and
Mhm.
that's not economically productive running a household. And this is where you get the stuff like pay women for looking after their kids.
Yeah.
Because Go on.
Oh, well, I don't. This you're saying during the Industrial Revolution. The thing is, even during the Industrial Revolution, like they
Yeah.
would have jobs. It just wouldn't be in factories. They'd be a shop assistant, or they do an awful lot of voluntary work, sure, but especially if you're a
Mhm.
working class woman, you would have to find ways to
Or
make extra money.
Sewing or running a market
Well, I
stall
think-
and stuff.
I'm sure George Orwell writes about it in Road to Wigan Pier. The women were either they'd look after the household, but they'd also be landladies. They'd make things for the local shop or whatever, sew or whatever.
Mhm.
I know what you mean though. It's not quite how it was with all the women, doing the wool,
No.
dyeing the wool and whatever. Yeah.
There was one MP in this period who went to some mine and was shocked to see that there were women in there, and even worse, they were topless, working down the mine. And so he comes up and passes, and they creates all this fuss, and they have to pass these laws that prevent these women, who no doubt needed the work,
Well,
from doing
yeah.
that.
Ban women from working. Great. Now they're starving.
yeah, many such cases.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I say, but the ideal is women aren't doing like quote unquote work the same as men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was an absolutely amazing tweet about it where it's like you can tell what class someone is by what the wife does. So if it's working class, she'll be working. If they're middle class, she won't do anything. If she's upper class, she'll be making a business that doesn't make any money.
Well, I mean, we've kind of compressed everybody into being middle class. I mean, this
Yeah.
is
Oh, yeah.
something from more modern, I guess, than this now, because obviously there was some like severe poverty in areas.
One odd job women used to do is they go into ponds to collect leeches.
Oh, shit.
Oh yeah,
But
you
she,
just
like,
let them
they-
bite onto you. Yeah.
Yeah, they like go on the legs and they take them off,
God.
sell them to like pharmacists and doctors and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I guess this is another point, right? We've kind of gone from a society of productive households to a society of individuals, just sort of by accident. Like it's not an ideological thing; it's nobody's fault.
No. Yeah.
It's just what seems to have
Well,
happened.
you
at
say
this
that,
point.
I blame socialists, but yeah.
Well, this is before socialism. This is
I
early
blame
1800s.
Catholics.
Sure. You blame fair enough.
Yeah.
I blame the French, but whatever.
I mean,
French
also,
Catholic.
also yes.
So the ways that men, so this is just a comparison, I guess, between men and women, is that sort of urbanism plays a role in strengthening how men organize. So men organize through the state, through politics, through armies, and now we've got things like trade unions. We've got societies based on a thing, which is not. it's something that I couldn't really think how to frame. Like you get trade unions are societies based around your work.
Right.
But you all know what I mean by a society based on
Yeah.
a thing. Like women don't really have that unless it's
Yeah,
like
your hobbies basically.
yeah, a book club is just an excuse
Yeah.
to sit around and bitch.
Yeah.
Is essentially true.
Well, that's why we made the Worcester Club.
Well, but my aunt used to have a sewing group with her friends that they called Stitch and Bitch.
Oh, amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go to a man's society based on a thing, you are doing the thing. That's why you're there, like a tennis club, a football club.
Yeah, I think Chris Williamson's talked about it. In Australia, don't they have like men in sheds or something?
Yeah, I
Where
mean
they just go along to make sheds. Yeah.
and this is it's a male space, right?
Yeah.
The sort of long talked about male space that modern feminists
Do
want
they
to
have
be
a
want to be a,
do they have a
want to be
point
a
there?
part of.
Do they have a
Well,
point to be part of this male space?
well, this is the point: is that
Yeah.
women's spaces have been sort of shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking
Right,
for hundreds of years. So I'm sort of at the point where we're like, no wonder they want to be involved.
Well,
So women organize around friend groups, which is limited by urbanism. Family is distanced if you move to the city. I mean, this is what happened to my grandmother. She moved to
Yeah, yeah.
Liverpool and lost most of her family by just distance.
It is the paradox of like cities, is that you're
mean-
surrounded by people, but you don't tend to know anyone.
Yeah, and I know so many men, even nowadays, men my age, who, I mean, even myself, like I've moved across the country. I've taken my girlfriend with me, and not knowing anybody around has a lot more of an effect on her than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is why I keep telling you to move to Wales.
I mean, at the time, obviously, the church was still quite strong, and women did a lot of
Yeah.
work in the church, as we've already talked about. And as you say, community is limited by urbanism. So all we're seeing is that every way that men organize and do things is strengthened by this urbanism that we see around the Industrial Revolution, and every way that women do things is limited or broken up by this way of living.
This is, I know it's a bit of a meme. I know it's a bit of a meme from me, but it's something I kind of want to address in my book of like, because my book is effectively an ode to Anglo-futurism, and I'm kind of thinking, what are women's spaces? And I guess this is explained why I have a tough time really thinking about it.
Exactly.
Because they don't really exist. I'm somewhat convinced by that. I mean, obviously, I think of my mum and it's like, well, church. Well, yeah, but how many women are getting involved in the church? Well, you know, if they're our age, say, they're a bit weird, frankly.
Like hobbies are definitely more of a man thing.
Oh yeah.
And like you're saying, like with the knitting, that's more of an excuse just for women just to talk,
to hang out. Yeah, and that's fine. That's what women enjoy
Yeah.
doing. That's completely
Whereas
fine.
hobbies for men, it is actually a like of the actual thing.
Yes,
And the socialization is secondary from it. Yeah.
This is where we get the sort of video games and media and hobbies that as soon as women join, they want to do things other than the thing, and they actually don't seem to like the thing very much.
Yeah. Well,
And this isn't just women. This is female-brained men.
Yeah. The tourists.
Well, it's true though.
Yeah.
And it's what we've been
it's
what we've been complaining about. It's the whole ethics in video games journalism, right?
Well, I mean, I'm not being funny. Video games are currently in the middle of a crash.
Yeah, and as I'm saying, it's all a 10th order result of the Industrial Revolution, is my thesis, really.
I mean, so would you say the Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race?
I am just giving you reasons.
Well,
I'm not imparting a moral judgment on it.
Oh no. Well, you can say it's value free all you want. The more we're going through this, and the more I've kind of grown up in this world, the more I'm thinking we're actually kind of in a turn of kind of having a complete reorganization of society. We're supposed to be in a kind of experimental phase for that, but we've not really been allowed to experiment properly.
Sure. Yeah.
So this is why everyone's depressed, because people want to do things, but laws and elites, I guess, if you can want to put it that way, are basically making that impossible. Because we all want to do. Why are there so many women-only gyms? Like, they don't want to be stared at by men. I mean, that might be part of it, but maybe at the end of the day, it's just, as you say, a place for women to go together and talk.
Women's toilets in nightclubs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely. I mean, Tash showed me what was it, 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps yesterday, and yeah, it's like there's a bit in that where it's like, right, emergency toilet meeting. Stop flashing your tits at men. Yeah. No, I totally get what you mean.
So talking about like marriage,
or
it's going to evolve into dating, quote unquote. But I'm not really sure about this period. Like, if you're a middle class man and woman in the city in the sort of early Industrial Revolution, like, how did marriage work at that point? Like, did you have more formal arranged marriages, or was it more common to choose yourself? I
Mm,
don't really know.
yeah.
So that's an
I
open
know.
question if anyone wants to answer that.
I mean, it's tough, but like from what I've seen of stuff, it seems a lot of like attention was played to the social ranking of each partner,
Right, so that
and
became
trying
more
to
formalized, I guess.
and trying to sort of marry up more for both
Right,
men
yeah, it's a
and
sort of Pride
women.
and Prejudice kind of
Yeah,
vibe.
I was
yeah.
going to say, wouldn't it be more Pride and Prejudice where you? Oh, it was greatly exemplified by that Poe the Person comic where it's like back then and it'd be like men courting women in a ballroom, and then it's like courting now and it's like on Tinder, whereas in the background the Pride and Prejudice is on with men courting women
Yeah, it's
in a
like, well,
ballroom.
that's something I forgot to mention about the sort of
Yeah.
more medieval stuff is that, yes, there were strict rituals
Yeah.
that both sexes had to follow.
Yeah, there were really obvious rules, and the rules are kind of changing every 5
Well,
years.
there aren't any rules
I
anymore.
Of course,
suppose that's another way of
we
putting it. Yeah.
we still do have those balls, but they are just for the elite of society, really. They still have like,
Mm,
you know,
they've got their galas and all that.
yeah, they still happen. Just we're not invited.
We can have our
Um,
own with blackjack and hookers.
I mean, I've got a. Some of my cousins are they're quite more upper class. Like one of them went to university with Prince William, and her mother planned to do one of these fancy balls for her daughter. Find some
Find
attractive
some suitors.
prospect. Yeah.
I suppose that's the thing. Women would. I mean, I, again, this would depend entirely on the class. I would imagine in more working class areas, it would be a bit more. Everyone kind of knows each other, and
Hmm.
so it'd be like the good old days. Whereas in upper class, it'd rather than it all be arranged like, oh, we need an alliance with France over there, right? Get
Yeah.
married.
Well, that's that's the royalty level.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
and
Well,
the
that's what I mean. It's
beneath that
different.
is sort of like the family is probably involved. Oh,
Yeah.
they're the Sussexes or whoever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean,
but I mean, the
That's
idea
what
of
I have to read
marrying
more.
up for women
Hmm.
is because they're going to be dependent on the man
Yeah.
or their lifestyle.
yeah, sure, yeah.
And so the women are dependent on the men in the way that they weren't previously.
Mhm.
And that leaves them open to abuse essentially.
Oh,
But that,
of course. Also, at this point, you got because you had a lot of the nobility weren't that well off. So then you had
Yeah.
these. They started marrying rich American heiresses
Yeah,
who come in with that
that's
money.
where Winston Churchill
I was
comes
going
from.
to
isn't
say,
it?
Yeah,
and this
yeah.
is
His
how we
mother's
have
American.
Churchill, which
His mother was American. I mean, that's a bit more sort
Mhm.
of 19. Well, no, actually, no. Churchill was.
It's getting there. Yeah.
Yeah, so sort of
Churchill was late
1880s.
1800s.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a bit before the sort of golden age. No,
Mm.
was it golden era? I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's no a lot of the time. So we end up with women having basically no way of taming their husband, I suppose, other than their sort of
Mm.
beauty
Mhm.
or whatever. They don't have anything economically to fall back on, and as you mentioned earlier, the state is taking on more and more of the sort of
Yeah,
protectiveness.
well, that's what Home Math constantly goes on about. It's like, women, wasn't just women to be fair, but this is how he puts it. Women would vote for more security from the state, more equality, money would basically be extracted from productive people, a lot of whom were men, put over to social security and what have you, which would, be taken up more by women. And so you have this kind of equalising of the income gap, and then, yeah, this whole idea of marrying up, which I know you're saying we didn't have that really in the Middle Ages. Yeah, Middle Ages would be fun.
Well, you want they wanted a suitable husband, not some idiot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But they kind
There
of
are
be,
standards.
yeah, they'd be marrying up in the sense that they'd have more security, I guess.
Yeah,
is
like
the
they would
way
be
I'd
marrying
put it.
well, I suppose, is maybe a
Yeah,
better way of.
yeah, which I guess, as we say, what Danes that has been abstracted into wages.
Yeah,
But now
yeah,
they've
it's all
been,
about. I mean, you see this more in America with the "I won't date a guy if he earns less than 6 figures."
yeah,
like,
which is
Yeah.
which as a lot of them say, like that's just women being hyperbolic. They just mean someone earning more than me.
Yeah, well, exactly, but it is a number, and there's been a hard limit put on that number.
To be fair, from the looks of it, it's not actually that difficult to earn that much in America compared to here. So,
Well, yeah, 6
I
figures
don't
in
know what
America isn't actually that bad.
I don't know what they're complaining about, but
So I mean, I'm gonna a bit sort of conclusions and other thoughts here is that what a lot of what happened in more Victorian times is that middle class women would turn to the church as a sort of proxy for community. I mean, many of the early feminists. This is where we're getting into the time where feminism became a thing. They were all rampant imperialists, and we know that some of them at that period joined the BNP, not the BNP, the BUF.
BNP, the BUF, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So the idea that feminism is inherently left wing seems to be a modern idea, and it's true. In modern time.
Well, I mean, Jaws. If you really want to go into it, there is an argument to say that the fascists were left wing.
Yes.
But I know
You know what I mean. You know what
Yeah.
I mean. They certainly were not communists.
They're not gay race communist.
They
Oh,
were. I mean, I was
yeah.
thinking that honestly, it seems like a bit of a way to nag the men into actually maintaining the
Yeah.
empire.
Amazing, yeah.
I mean, I do think. Well, as I was sort of jokingly saying the other day that the Victorians were woke.
Yeah.
That towards the end of
True.
the sort of 1800s, there was definitely a feel that the men weren't as individually strong
Mhm.
or sort of based, for lack of a better word, than as they used to be. Like there was some report I read of an Indian woman saying to this sort of English boy, like, oh, an old Indian woman, like back in my day, the Englishman that I knew would be climbing up that mountain by this time in the morning, and you're lazing around in bed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it's I would all I can imagine is that it's the hard men create good times issue.
Yeah.
That just seems to be an inevitable cycle.
And I can imagine that if women were seeing this, because women can sniff out weak men very easily.
Yes.
I know, I've experienced it.
That seeing this weakness, they might try and do something about it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they shame you into being useful.
Exactly. It's World War One. The sort of even the suffragettes of that sort of paused their movement during World War One.
Right, stop. Right, you go off to war. Go on, get in the sun.
Yeah, but there's the whole white feather, white flower thing to shame a man.
Well, I was thinking again, there's a video game reference, Red Dead Redemption 2. If you don't do enough for the camp, the women start having a go at you, basically.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Well, exactly, and that's normal and natural, and that's how the world works.
We can go further back with the Celts, and the women would come on to the battlefields, go on, you better fight, or they're going to get us.
Well, yeah.
And there was one point, I know one account where their men started retreating, so the women just picked up weapons and started killing their own men, going, you cowards, what are you doing? Fight these Romans, damn it.
Oh, God.
Yeah. I can believe it.
This is what happened to Alfred the Great. Oh, I do not know enough about that.
Oh, is it the cake? The burning of the cakes?
The cakes, yeah.
He gets shouted at by some peasant wife.
Scolded, yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, I need to learn more about
That's
Alfred
the
the
tale.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's when England is basically just a swamp, and Alfred's hiding in it, and he's with this peasant woman, and she tells him to watch the cakes, make sure they don't burn.
She doesn't know that he's the king. He's just some random guy that her husband's taken in.
Yeah, they burn, and then he's scolds him. She scolds him.
He's thinking about England and how to save her.
Yeah,
and she
says, shouldn't have burned the cakes.
Yeah, and then he gets shouted at by this peasant woman.
Yeah.
And that was a sort of funny enough event for that to be a story that's lasted down the ages.
Useless man lost your country, can't even watch the cakes.
Yeah. He had one job.
I might have heard
save
that
the
story.
country, I guess.
I might have heard that story. I just forgot it, but very good.
Obviously around this time we've got things like friendly societies and charities and kind of the birth of NGOism. It's sort of bored maybe progressive women finding a social cause to nag men into giving money to.
Yeah, but let's not pretend that that's always a bad thing.
Well, I'm not giving a moral judgment here.
I'd say these women who got involved in these things, they're definitely the more upper middle class and upper class ones.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Who don't have that work that they would have need to have done in the past, whereas they'd all be busy working, or you'd be nobility, which comes with its own set of responsibilities.
Well, it's like the Mary Poppins, the wife of the banker. I can't remember.
Yeah, she's the feminist. Yeah,
she's part of the suffrage.
Suffragettes. Yeah,
I think she's actually suffragists in that.
No, I saw it recently. It's the suffragettes because it's the
suffragettes?
whole thing of like, we I had to explain like, no, the suffragettes were awful. The suffragists were the ones who weren't terrorists.
Yeah. So suffragists are the good ones. Suffragettes were the fascists. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're all aware of like friendly societies before the NHS.
Yeah,
were
the
sort of
NHS killed
way
it.
that you, well, yeah, I'll come on to that in a sec. With the way that to pay for any medical treatment you needed.
Yeah. Well, it was effectively a big community pot
Yeah.
that you'd effectively pay into as insurance.
And some of it was organised by the church, which would again
Yep.
have been organised by local women.
Yep. Yeah. Thank God for women.
So women's, but their role in public life is still limited, whilst men's increases. This is private sort of social relationships organization. It's not official, basically state or business.
Yeah.
So if we talk about so moving on to the sort of World War era, I've essentially framed it in that both men and women were nationalized.
Oh my God, you make it sound horrible.
So
it's true.
Women were put to work in factories when the men were off to war. Then obviously the men came back and were like, where are our jobs?
Mm-hmm.
Women lost control of the sort of friendly societies, as we've just said, with the NHS and the welfare state. So women's organisation in that respect has been nationalised, and obviously community stuff is more and more centralised by political power, which is official male-dominated power, or it's not even male-dominated; it's male-brained. Like the fact that mostly men do it is downstream from the idea that it works in a way that suits male thinking. Obviously, men were sent off to war in a way that because that's how men were nationalised. No one wants more war after that because it was awful.
And then they had another. Yeah.
Well, so women were sort of losing more and more ways to affect the world and to sort of look after themselves. They've got the sort of industrial and urban world is quite male-brained, and I'm sort of at the point where I'm like, is it any wonder that they were like, fuck it, we want official hard recognition of who we are.
Yeah.
And that's the early feminist movement.
I mean, I know it's a bit of a meme for the online right to say giving women the vote was a massive mistake, but
What was the alternative?
I really
Is
don't. I just don't see the issue with it either. Like, women
No
vote,
one having the right to vote. That's the alternative.
Well, yes. I mean, we're saying that working class men didn't get the right to vote until pretty recently as well.
Well, that too, but also like you look at voting patterns. Men and women's voting patterns have only really massively shifted since a bit in the 80s, and then they've done it a bit more now. But the rest of the time, they're actually pretty even.
But that's not even the point. The point is that the
sure.
need for women to be given the vote is downstream from men getting the vote, which is downstream of the Industrial Revolution, basically.
Yeah. Well, I suppose this is the thing. Like, we're kind of saying that because effectively, because if we want to go a bit, I'll say Jordan Peterson about it, but I know it's a lot wider than that. Obviously, kind of male brain. If you want to go like that, that's more order. Female brain's more chaos. I want to put it that way. So
yeah, but the sort of female way of doing things has been essentially abolished by the state, which is the male way of doing things.
Because that's all order. Yeah. So we're in a time period where there's just no chaos, and women are kind of going mad from it.
Well, there's no point in women. Like, what is the point in women in this era?
Sucks. Yeah. Well, what was their answer? Become men and get rid of men.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So I mean, I've just sort of put a bit of a rant here. Is that feminism is women's response to a society based on technology, which is what the Industrial Revolution is. Technology is male brain. Men invented it all, and that's why they blame men.
Yeah.
Life is materially easier, but now what for women? What's the point in women?
Make babies, I guess.
Well, and that there's a lot more to it than that in the way that humans have lived for all the time before this period.
Yeah.
Well, even the making babies. Well, you don't need that anymore. We can import Indians.
Well, that's where we've got to, isn't it?
Oh
no.
Yeah.
I use the word cargo cult again. Like either women live in a cargo cult of the pre-industrial village, as if they pretend that this is still the way the world works, or they accept that the world now works differently. They live in a middle-class urbanized society, so they might as well act like it.
Yeah.
And this is kind of why I wanted to talk about this, because men still don't understand this. Like, 150 years later, 100 years later, men, especially conservative American men, pretend that we're a society of productive households.
Mm.
And this is enforced in laws like family courts and things, which obviously fucks over men a lot.
Yeah.
Because it still pretends that they're the sort of patriarch
Breadwinners,
and that and that we're it still pretends that the household is more important than the individuals.
Yeah, which isn't quite the world we live in anymore.
It hasn't been for 200 years.
Would you say that long?
Well, in England, maybe not in America.
well, even in England, I'd question
18,
it. But I know what you
1820
mean.
Okay, well, when's the
It's
start of
been
the Industrial Revolution? 1840s?
Yeah, mid 1800s.
So that's nearly
even,
200 years.
Well, yeah, but the difference with us is that we had a whole empire that we were kind of looking after. So men who didn't want to urbanize would go off and become stories and ripping yarns and explore Australia and things.
Well, they found America. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Try and civilize those savages.
Yes, exactly. Whereas, well, obviously now there's no option for that unless you want to go to space. But you need to be such a high. Well, then again, you probably need to be a massive high Q individual.
Try and civilize those savages. It just might not go down very well.
It's deemed racist now, unfortunately. Hence, we need to give Chagos to Mauritius for some reason. But anyway.
Yeah, and this is something that's obviously complained about, is that the inevitable response of women sort of entering society is that society becomes more feminine.
Yeah.
And that, now we have women making laws, and the whole concept of law was a thing to keep men in order.
And
then obviously we're going to end up with weird laws.
And now we've ended up with weird laws, whereas if you burn a Quran in public, that's illegal because it might hurt people's feelings. But burning a British flag's fine. Because
but what I'm saying is that this process started a century before you think it did.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And we've got to the point where obviously men sort of instinctively think like this. So obviously they'll support the sort of women-brained laws because they're just laws.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose that's the problem with people like Keir Starmer say would be absolutely fine if laws were still made by men, I guess, because he would at least enforce them. But he's autistically enforcing feminine laws, I guess, is what you say.
Yeah, I suppose, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't.
No. Well, it's made a society where what did you say? I suppose I'd rather call it female brain. The female brains are, or the feminine brains are now saying, because it's not just women. Idris Elba. Oh, just take the point off knives. What?
Yeah, but that's how you control a toddler.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas what would Axel Rudy Cabana do with a knife with no point? He'd sharpen it. Wow.
Or he'd
get a
do more
screwdriver.
Or he'd just do more damage to somebody he's trying to stab.
Yeah. Or get a screwdriver.
Yeah, he'd find a way around it.
If I'm going to be stabbed to death, I prefer it to be sharp, to be honest.
Yeah.
Eventually, we get to the point of, well, I just find a stick and sharpen it. You can't.
Well, you don't even. You can just get bludgeoning instruments in the end. Just get like a baseball bat or a hammer and cave first on it.
Well, that's what he tried to do 5 years before the stabbing. He just got a hockey stick. He didn't manage to get anyone, luckily. But yeah, it does. This is the thing. What would men say? Put him in a prison. Don't let him out. Maybe even capital punishment if you're that way inclined.
Yeah, and it all gets very confused because when we say men and women, it doesn't really work in the modern day.
No, yeah.
But it would work 100 years ago. That men 100 years ago would be like, of course, you just put him in prison.
Yeah. Well, women would probably say it too.
I think a lot of women 100 years ago too.
Yes,
allegedly, he's already had his jaw bashed in by some of the other prisoners.
That was fake.
That was fake.
Oh, that's a shame.
The point is that we're so far down the road now.
Yeah.
Like by an order of centuries that everything's bizarre.
Yeah.
Everything's blurred and it does nothing make sense.
Everything's been forced to be a bit chaotic, and now we're in a realm of.
So I'm not really going to talk about this very much, but this is something that Mary Harrington talks about. That there's kind of two types of feminism. There's feminism of care, which is like your mum's feminism, and there's feminism of freedom, which is the sort of libtard communist feminism.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, feminism of care is sort of about advocating for women's rights as women in the sort of historical sense, whereas feminism of freedom is no, we need to be men.
Yeah, well, the big I guess difference is feminism of care is like, well, protect women, encourage them to be more child carers, make that as easy as possible for them if
Yeah.
you can. Feminism and
yeah.
freedom, just let them bang and no kids.
We
I
need to be men.
guess. Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to let you talk about that. I need the loo, so I'll be back in a minute.
Okay, I'll read it. History, first half of the 21st century. Marriage, more love matches. Yes. I think this is something that the person said as well, that like love would kind of be secondary, or as a result of marriage.
Well, I don't know. My grandparents, they sort of courted, I'd say, for quite a long time before getting married.
Oh yeah, it won't be in every case, but
and they were it was very much a love match for them.
Well, that's what we're saying. I'm talking about like someone in the village who looks a bit hot. You might not necessarily be someone you love, but someone that you've been kind of approved of with your parents, and then you'd marry them, and then it'd be like, well, we're doing this for survival. And then you end up relying on each other to the point where, well, what is it if it's not love anyway? I think that's more what the point here is. Innocent women are bad judges of male character.
Yeah.
Yeah. Men don't have to follow.
Yeah, there's do you think it's worse now with like in women's innocence? It's probably
women's innocence is definitely worse. Have you seen what the average 10-year-old
you
wears?
know what I mean, in awareness to like men. It's probably they have got more aware of that.
Oh,
they're
yeah,
a bunch of bad men.
Yeah, I think they're very aware of how bad men can be in the modern day. Men don't have to follow strict social rules; they just have to riz. Yeah, I can see that.
Well, I'm back now. This is the point: is that not only are innocent women bad judges of male character,
right,
the men are also not incentivized to have good character.
Yeah,
so
this
is a double problem.
Well, this is something we've been saying for a while. Like, I think I always put it as a lot of people do invite the term incel to be applied to them, just because they act like total morons.
I'd say that the bad male character is a lot worse these days than the first half of the 20th century.
Yes,
oh, absolutely, yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. I know what you mean. Like, if you were a scumbag fuckboy in a medieval village, you would not last very long.
Well, you probably get kicked to death.
Thrown out at worst. Thrown out at best.
Yeah, kicked to death at worst around the back of the tavern. Oh, why'd you do that? Oh, he deflowered, my daughter or whatever.
Exactly. Like,
and then she'd get a punishment as well if she wanted it.
It's taken seriously, yeah.
Or if she wants it, they'd be forced to get married effectively. Which is incentivized to don't just shag the village whore.
I do understand nowadays when women like men do get away with a lot more nowadays.
Yeah, definitely.
Bad
definitely.
than they would have done in previous eras. So I sort of understand women in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, there will be so many men who they'll think back and they'll think, oh, when I did that at the time, that didn't feel wrong, but now I've grown up, I kind of wish I knew that was a social rule.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, well, at the start I was talking about the sort of stages of life, and there's the sort of young man stage of men's life where
adventure and what have you.
Actually, a lot of that does involve chasing women.
It does, yeah. Well,
and
Kingdom Come Deliverance. Yeah.
And obviously that's evolutionarily to try and find somebody to have children with.
Just carry on the human race. That's all it is. Not a great survival tactic as a whole, but your brain's going to go in.
It's kind of why I do still encourage men to go to university because of this, because you still can actually. I mean, maybe not in current year.
It's about as close to adventure as you can get for an 18-year-old.
I wouldn't want my daughter going, but you do actually get to get drunk and go on adventures and chase women.
Yeah.
Which is the only time in your life where you can really get away with that.
Yeah, exactly. But then again, as I said before, I wish I knew those social rules. Most of those, in my mind, are in uni. But maybe that's part of learning it. I don't know. Maybe it was true back then.
Well, the point, that's kind of the point, is that nowadays every generation has to learn from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing. Common wisdom. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say... The thing is, when we say that, it sounds like we've had failed parents. I think my dad did pretty well to try and tell me what these or demonstrate these social rules. I just ignored them because everyone at uni's a a poon dog, for lack of a better term. Everyone chases girls, and so you kind of forget that. Yeah. We are men after all.
And I think that, as I say, I think that's healthy and natural for young men.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't want it to be my daughter that's being chased.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The women need to say no, unfortunately. And generally,
struggle with that.
Yeah, well, yeah. Women still 100% dependent on their husbands unless they go girl boss mode. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the housewife, isn't it? It's the 50s housewife is this era.
Yeah, definitely.
So if we move on to the second, go on.
The sort of the trad cons like I was mentioning earlier, and like we talked about how, like they think this sort of housewife, the 1950s housewife, is normal.
Yeah, this is the sort of Uber gate based gigatrad.
Yeah, it's
is literally this, which is the most.
The amount of them that think the ideal world is go get some random cabin in the woods, go there with a woman, she'll be at home, keeping a home all day, looking after the kids and cooking, and you go out hunting or whatever.
She just does a bit of dusting.
She's gonna go. She's gonna go stir.
Yeah, but it's kind of missing. It's kind of mishmashing this era with the medieval village era, and assuming that they're the same.
It's always like that.
Which they're not. Yeah, I think the funniest example I have is obviously everyone knows BetterHelp and never use BetterHelp. They're basically a scam. But they've made a new advert recently where it's just this woman who's like, we implying I guess her husband, we moved to this rural area and I've found that my mental health isn't great, and she's there with like a duck that's quacking, which is quite cute, and it's clearly BetterHelp's basically a thing for women, and I don't know why they bother trying to advertise to men, but they do that. But the women are always like, I like being in my car and just talking to someone. And it's like BetterHelp just sounds like a chatting app at this point.
It's hire a friend.
Yeah, that's what BetterHelp sounds like at this point, but unfortunately they've been caught in a load of
that's what therapy is. It's hire a friend, somebody to talk to.
Yeah, I cannot tell you how much it annoys me when I watch Real Housewives with TOSH sometimes and things like that, but the amount of times that like a man does, like obviously all the women are like, go to therapy's got to be for everyone, as you say, it's just hire a friend, but when they advise men go through it, I'm just like, it won't work. Men don't want to sit down and talk about their feelings, they just want to feel useful. That's all men want to feel. And Tash just shouted weak. I'm not going to therapy. Right, anyway.
25% of Americans in therapy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I know, and whenever I watch the millennial version of Real Housewives, like everyone cheats on each other, and everyone's like, just go to therapy, it makes me feel great, and then next day they're cheating on someone else. It's like it doesn't help.
Miserable.
Yeah, everyone's miserable. It's like they're all on antidepressants and they're all at therapy. It's like, yeah, it's because you all keep cheating on each other.
So simple as.
Yeah, it's just like you all don't like each other. Basically, is what I can tell. Well, the men don't anyway. The women probably do. It's just
if we take a jump forwards in time slightly.
Yeah, it's fine.
So by the time we get to the sort of second half of 20th century up until now, we've got the sort of failure of men essentially. Yeah. Men aren't providing physical safety because the state is doing that. Men aren't working for their family and their household; they're just a cog in a machine. There's automation, industrialization. They aren't even around that much due to the work they're doing, which again wasn't a thing throughout history. I mean, obviously men were going to war and things, but they're not even doing that because we're not fighting because of the war to end all wars. When women say
I'm going to Ukraine.
When women say men used to go to war, like it's true.
Yeah.
I don't care for the men who sort of talk about this. Like they long for the warrior spirit. It's like, well, you could have joined the army,
Well, exactly.
That's still there.
But then I'll be fighting the Zog. Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Who cares,
these people.
You could join the French Foreign Legion if you actually wanted.
Yeah. These people never would have been any sort of military, but they just use that as an excuse.
Another thing, because just the size of the state, everyone's getting poorer and poorer, and that affects men more, and women don't respect them as much. People, men included, are less and less educated because the state runs their education. I mean, talking obviously UK specifically there. But on the flip side, men are quite happy to be alone. You know, within reason, a lot happier than women.
Yeah.
So even then, it still benefits men.
Yeah, I
Like,
know.
as much as I hate him, I have seen Andrew Tate described as where he's just reacting to incentives. He's playing the game basically. This is what men do these days.
Yes. So well, it's kind of the pendulum, isn't it? Is that
Yeah.
we started off with sort of relative equality, I suppose, but not equality in the way that we talk about it. I guess equivalency maybe is a better word. The pendulum swung towards men being sort
Yeah.
of more powerful, and what's the point in women?
Yeah.
Now it's swung back into what's the point in men?
Mhm.
And where the hell is it going to swing next? And maybe Andrew Tate in the sort of manosphere is that.
Which is unfortunate because it's just pure hedonism.
I don't think it will. I don't think it will. I kind of hate to say it. I think there's basically going to be some. I don't want to say a world war. I don't necessarily think it'd be that big, but certainly kind of worldwide, just social breakdown. Almost a reset. Just basically a bit like Starship Troopers. We're already in a situation where not people who need to be policed aren't being policed. That's only going to get worse. So
and like the manosphere, despite all their talk of like alpha masculinity, their masculinity isn't going to build at anything.
I mean, I think it's been said by SJJ over on the Anglo Gang. Like, you know, a lot people like Andrew Tate. Yeah, he's a kickboxer and what have you. But a lot of people who follow him won't be doing that. One will just be working out, and they won't be able to fight.
Yeah, being a champion kickboxer is definitely something I will give him praise for. That takes work.
Yeah,
but
even then, learning those
thing is,
but even that, learning those techniques. I mean, how's that going to do with you when you're actually in modern warfare with guns and?
It's not just that. It's that throughout history, men were expected to be capable of individual violence at any point.
Yeah.
If it was necessary, and he is more capable than any of us of just individual violence.
I mean, sure, yeah, well, yeah, I'll give you that. I still just remember my mum. Basically, my family was brought up to try and avoid violence at all costs, so we avoid violence as much as we can. And
that's
then
the French part of you.
Well, maybe, but this is the thing. This is how our mother brought us up. But then we got to our 20s, and then like I think my brother was in a club or something. He got punched in the face by someone because he looked at him funny, something like that. I don't know what the exact story is, but my brother just landed on the ground, laughed, and then he was taken out by security. And my mum was like, "Why don't my boys fight back?" Like, which I found really weird, like myself, because I was like, I thought we weren't supposed to fight, but my mum was obviously releasing this inner actual want of, well, men should be capable of violence.
Sargon has a story about how his son at school went and punched the bully, and of course the school goes and calls him in, going, "This is outrageous." And Sargon just asks his son, "So what happened?" "Oh, he was a bully." And Sargon just goes, "Good lad, we're going for ice cream."
Well, hopefully he wasn't lying, but
they even get annoyed if you break up with fights. Because I had to break up a few, and because the teachers aren't going to fucking break them up, so you have to like literally like get in between them, push them away, and they try and tell you off of that. They can't really, so they get a bit annoyed.
Well,
I think they get a little. They got a little bit more annoyed because it's sort of like a student doing the job the teacher should have done.
But the teacher can't do anything because otherwise it's a safeguarding issue. Yeah. Well, it's also I can't remember where I heard this, but there's a difference in the way that women and men break up fights that boys are having, and women will say stop that, stop that, stop that. Men will say okay.
Yes.
Men will say, oh, that's enough. You know, like men will understand. Oh, you know, boys testosterone. They like to, you know, get a bit horsey. Therefore, get away. You know, that's enough. I understand, but you've done enough now. You made your point. Women are like, oh, you should never do that in the first place. And obviously, school teachers, you know, 70-80% women, something like that. So, I mean, God, I remember when when I had to go in to talk about me being bullied at school, and I was basically asked by a male teacher, why didn't you just thump him? I was like, because I've always been told not to, so I don't. But
it's mixed messages, isn't it? It genuinely is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when you go into those, I can't remember what those classes are called, but ones where effectively you're taught at school how to behave like a normal person, it's always like violence is never the answer, isn't it? But then this is why I love Starship Troopers. It's the first time I saw actually violence is pretty much the underlying answer to everything.
But it's not even that. Like every
Yeah.
fairy tale, every
Mhm.
historical story, Lord of the Rings,
Yeah, kill people.
it's they literally just kill the evil.
Yeah.
And
Like-
it's kind of there's a C.S. Lewis quote which is something like, "We know that children are going to face villains in the real world, so let them have at least heard of heroes."
Oh, that's a good quote.
Like you were saying in your in the past, as men, you'd be all expected if the Sharif came knocking, going like, "We've got some bandits, go get a posse." You had to arm up and go deal with
Well,
them.
I mean, going back to sort of Anglo-Saxon times,
Yeah.
medieval times, like a constable
Mhm.
is somebody who, yeah, as you say, goes and sort of organizes the local men.
Yeah.
As like an officer, essentially.
Mhm.
Well, you don't even have to go that far back. Go back just over a century ago, the Tottenham outrage. The police are unarmed in this country, obviously, but they have
Yeah.
armed bank robbers like running down Tottenham.
I mean,
So they just ask locals, "Do you have your gun?" Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. yeah, the Englishman has always historically been armed.
Yeah.
That was your responsibility as a man, that you would be able to arm
Well,
yourself.
the police were more there as mediators and
Yeah.
to process criminals that the public had actually already caught.
Well, yeah, I mean,
And to batter protesters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah.
miners, yeah. The Doctor Who police telephone box, like,
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
ask people, why is the phone on the outside?
Yeah, exactly.
Because, well, you can
'Cause you're
open the
supposed
door
to-
for it. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
you're supposed to lock the prisoner. You're supposed to citizens arrest
Mhm.
somebody,
Yeah.
lock them in the box, and then use the phone on the outside to call the police.
Well,
Yeah.
the phone's actually on the inside to protect it from water, but it opens out so that you can
Yeah.
use.
I
The
know- you
phone
know what
like
I mean,
that.
yeah.
I know what you mean. Yeah. It was for that, but also police used to kind of go in there as a kind of checkpoint, like they'd call the
Yeah.
station, be like, "Here I am, here's my report." But yeah, it was there for arrests as well.
I mean,
And that's
these
from the
days,
60s. That's not even.
Yeah.
That's not. You know.
well, at the latest, it was the
These-
'60s. Yeah.
these
Most
days, you look
awful.
at the state of the Met, it's going to be a little female police officer hiding in the police box from all the criminals outside.
Well, I mean, thinking of that Nando's thing in London where
Unless she has a
half
taser or pepper spray.
Oh yeah, well half,
But even then.
God, half a year ago, remember the woman just got hit in the face by a plate by a customer in a Nando's for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Only just been arrested, that guy.
Yeah.
Just like, why is there no trust in the police? Because no one trusts them. The problem is that people will trust that if you try and take the law into your own hands, even when it's necessary, they'll arrest you then.
Yeah.
They
will.
yeah, they have to keep up a facade that law and order's there, but if it's not going to make it to the news, they don't really care. And even when it does, like massive failures with Rudy Cabana again, Prevent's not changed. Prevent's never going to change because we're in a world where, well,
I mean,
frankly, we're in a world of female brain where there has to be chaos because they seem to
You
like
can-
it.
I mean, these days,
Yeah.
if say some guy in the house next door, as Axel was doing his murdering,
Yeah.
grabbed a kitchen knife, went out and killed Axel in defense of
Or he
those
could
girls,
do it, yeah.
that guy would be arrested. He'd be in prison now.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
possibly. Yeah.
There'd be a lot of public outrage. It just depends. Like, that's the only way he can get off.
I mean,
If
the
the public hear
the
about
most
you.
ridiculous one was the guy defending himself with a narwhal horn
Yeah.
Oh,
in the
yeah,
London,
yeah,
was it
yeah,
London
yeah,
Bridge
yeah. Yeah.
attack?
Well, he didn't get arrested, but yeah, like we're so unarmed that you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, happen
Yeah,
to be
the
carrying a narwhal thorn.
Practical narwhal horn.
Yeah.
And there's the old man who, yeah, he was like in his 70s or something, and these two people break in. He kills one of them, and they arrested him. Luckily, there was like the public heard about it and got enough outrage to get him off.
There is I think it is. If there is a dead body found and there is there's basically always a suspected murder if there's a body found with wounds. So I think they technically always have to arrest someone. But there's some technicality in the law, so I'm not too mad about that. But
I know
he
in
got
the
off, so.
the better American states where they have castle doctrine and stuff, if you kill someone who's broken into your home, they won't arrest you.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Which
makes
is how
sense.
it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not being funny, but it's pretty obvious if someone's broken into your home or not, or if you've dragged them in to try and frame it. So,
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think as I sort of phrased it, that men have been nationalised.
Yeah.
Um, and men aren't aware of this. It's not the everyday man's fault. And
Yeah.
a lot of men, maybe conservative men as well, sort of don't really think about it and kind of again live in a cargo cult of previous eras, which is where we get the sort of ideological gender roles from. Like, no,
Yeah. Well,
she does the washing up, I mow the lawn.
well, it's
Why?
Yeah. Well, it's what I have to keep reminding people. Like, normies do not care about this whole gender role thing. They just do what they feel like. Why do men mow the lawn? Because it's
But
more
then
physical.
I talked to
fun.
my grandmother, and she was like, "Well, I see men carrying babies around, like just in town, and that men would never have done that in my day.
Yeah.
Like they just wouldn't have considered it proper."
Yeah, and it's.
See, I don't really see a problem with that. If the baby needs carrying, well, why not?
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I don't know.
So what I'm going to say about here is why women get a bit resentful. Women are still having children. Men aren't. I guess you can equate going to war and sort of participating in violence as for men as having children is for women, because it's a potentially life-threatening thing that you go through. Women are still mostly raising children. Obviously, there's education and daycare and stuff to take into account now. Women are still doing the sort of medieval woman jobs like washing and cooking and cleaning and all that. But obviously, there's been some automation, which ended up with the 50s housewife being quite bored.
They were all on Xanax.
Exactly.
Well, yeah,
Drug him up. Yeah.
fucking miserable.
Well, it's quite in the Queen's Gambit, which is, it's good for a Netflix show, I'd say. But yeah, it is quite funny because that's all about basically why that whole story happens. Is there's just a bored housewife who she can't have a kid with a husband who resents her for whatever reason. And then she's like, well, I want a child, but we can't have one, so we'll adopt. And they adopt, obviously, the girl who learns chess. And yeah, it's just the whole reason she learns chess is basically to get out of the house because she's just so depressed being around her mother who's out of her gourd on drugs, playing the piano badly every day just for entertainment. Yeah,
yeah. Women are involved in sort of public life in a way that they would never beforehand.
Yeah,
in their education, work.
Well, maybe this is why there's been such a rise in HR. Just because that seems very much like a woman's club from what I can tell.
Well, maybe it's policing behaviour,
yeah,
which is extremely female. Again, this is. I guess my point is that women are still doing what they were doing in the Paleolithic, plus more, whereas men aren't doing what they were doing in the Paleolithic.
Yeah.
And another point again that I've seen with several friends that, like in real life, that women are often quite lonely. If they're away from their family and friends, especially if they have a baby.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I can see why there's resentment there. And also, like, if your husband isn't doing anything that your cave woman brain thinks the caveman should be doing.
Well, I suppose this is the problem, isn't it? You're not seeing them do work if they go away for work, and then.
But even if you work an office job from home, like.
Oh yeah, no, I know that's going to annoy them, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I suppose this is the advantage of going to do horses every day with my girlfriend. So, because I've had to wrestle a horse as well before. She's been very happy with my competence in that. So there you go. It was quite funny actually over Christmas, playing a game with the family. It's like this question and answer game. I think it was called Herd Mentality. So the more answers you gave that were the same, the more points you got. But one of the questions was, what's the biggest animal you reckon you could wrestle to the ground? And both me and Tash put horses, and everyone's like, there's no way you can wrestle a horse to the ground. What are you on about? And we're like, we've both done it. We've both literally done it. But yeah, it's quite fun to see that. But this is the thing as well, like, sure, men are stronger than women physically and all that, but on average, babe, Tash is stronger
not
than me, to be fair.
It's not even on average
Makes sense.
necessarily. Like it's something ridiculous that 90% of men are stronger than
Yeah.
90% of women.
That's still on average,
Yeah.
but yeah, I know what you
And
mean.
I like grip strength. The top, like
Yeah.
10% of women is the bottom.
Oh yeah,
like 90% of men.
Yeah, like professional bodybuilder woman versus average man in an arm wrestle.
Yeah.
The average man still wins. Yeah.
Well, if you spend any time doing jiu-jitsu or any other martial arts, you see the difference there pretty quickly.
Yeah, so we get it. I mean, now I'm gonna rant about quote unquote dating. Men like modern dating because they get easy sex.
Yep.
And I've talked about this with sort of supposedly conservative men, and they always feel a bit sort of sheepish
Yeah.
when I'm like, "Well, why are you just dating? Like,
Yeah.
I thought you were a conservative. Why aren't you trying to marry somebody?" And they'll skirt around it, and eventually, you sort of realize that they like it because they're getting cheap sex.
I've also had this discussion with women who they sort of love their abortions. They think abortions are women's rights, and I have pointed out to them, it's for men who really benefit, so that
Yeah.
they can have easy sex with you with zero chance of having any sort of consequences.
Mm-hmm. And kind of what I said earlier, that at no point in human history have men had to go up to a girl in a bar and just charm her. Like there are no rules of we're back to caveman times in terms of this. Like all you've got is, I guess, who you are as a person.
I mean, you did have the men who did do that, but it certainly wasn't everyone was expected to do that.
No. In the modern day, men can mess women around as much as they like with with basically no consequences, unless they're convicted of something.
Yeah.
And which is what it means is that you need to get the state involved, which makes it very much harder to actually deal with the problem. We've said this, would have been handled by a family rather than some stupid state officer that doesn't care. Is it any wonder that women quote unquote hate men? And this is it's something that I've had to get into my head, is that when girls your age say, "Oh, I hate men," they don't mean you.
They have a point.
Yeah.
They have a point.
And like you were saying about the life stages, women sort of have this adventuring period too now.
Yeah.
Which they didn't have.
They
But in the
never
past,
would have had before.
no,
And
in the past, there was,
that is why we have such weird things about age of consent laws.
Yeah.
It's
because in the past it was more they'd be helping with whatever their family work was probably, and then they'd get married and help with whatever their husband's work was with.
Or doing their own stuff for the household.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
On the flip side, women like dating because it gets them easy attention and it gives them status among other women.
Yeah.
Which makes them more vain and dismissive of men or individual men, as there's always a better offer. I mean, this is where dating apps come from.
Yeah.
Women now have, official state-sanctioned public rights, and no sort of intrinsic responsibility. So why not? There's the pill, which we're going to talk about in a bit. Women were not able to function in society in the sort of 18th and 19th century. Even if a woman goes to get a job, like a proper job, like as a lawyer or something in Victorian England, she's still not going to be accepted. She's still not probably going to be as good at it, if I'm being sort of harsh. But now the game has been rigged in their favour. We've got HR, we've got anti-discrimination laws, got all that.
Well, pay disparities that have now been by courts.
Yeah, well,
deemed...
and that's what I'm saying. Is it any wonder women hate men? Is it any wonder that men hate women?
Margu in the chat saying about Dankula and his problems with dating, but like John's saying, he screws them all.
Yeah,
not just
degenerate.
Not just the women either.
Dankula is a fucking weirdo.
Yeah.
Like, he might be funny, and he is funny, and he's got, sort of politics that you might agree with. But as a person, he's an absolute weirdo, and I'm not surprised he's divorced.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Tell me how you really feel. Yeah. Dankula could have just stayed married.
Love you, Dank.
Yeah.
Love you.
So
Yeah.
go on.
Amazing.
Say what you're saying.
Oh, I don't even know. Well, I was gonna just defend Ankler a bit and say, well, he's Christian now, but then again, I don't know how seriously he
Yeah,
takes
but he's
that
not. He's not though.
necessarily.
He's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Though.
Yeah.
He's the
Seeing a new woman every couple of nights, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, fair enough. Yeah, I'm not
Plus,
gonna
he
bother.
went with the Orthodox, which is the trad right-wing LARP religion.
I like how
Like-
Mr. Bros asked how could Dankula have just stayed married by not getting a divorce.
Yeah.
Well,
By not being a weirdo.
yeah, I don't know. Obviously, I don't know the details of the divorce or anything like that, but I doubt we ever will know properly. But
Well, it doesn't sound like his wife's very happy with him.
No, and it doesn't sound like he's very happy with his ex-wife either.
No.
So God knows
No.
what happened there. Yeah,
So I mean, just as Kirby sent me this meme the other day that made me laugh.
That showed me this. Yeah.
That it's true though. Like modern men's sort of modern concept of masculinity has essentially devolved back to caveman times or sort of
Mhm.
pre-medieval times.
What
You know,
with
Yeah.
alcohol, potatoes, and well, you wouldn't have potatoes back in Anglo-Saxon times.
you know what I mean? It's like
and-
tattoos. It's certain
Mhm.
hairstyles. It's
Feasts.
jewelry. Which, if
Yeah.
you look at sort of Victorian men in suits and clean shaven
Yeah.
and looking civilized,
Yeah.
it's not about as an individuality as much. In the
Mhm.
sort of what we would think about as civilized, like
Hmm.
not the modern aesthetic. You know, and it's the kind of presence for dad masculinity. Like if you Google that, it's always like whiskey flavored this, that, and the other, and leather things, and
Yeah. Well, tattoos. I
it's-
should say what. Tash was
it's all very
saying-
sort of superficial.
Yeah, Tash saw this meme as well, and she said like apparently a load of men get like tattoos of clocks or watches on them, and she
Don't
didn't
really
understand
understand
why. Yeah, and I didn't even know it was a thing. But apparently it is a common thing. But yeah, I mean, I suppose bracelets and necklaces on men have that really wasn't. I can't think of that as being a kind of classic style anywhere in like
Well,
English
everything's a lot
tradition
simple.
before.
Everything's a lot less formal. Things well, there's more just sort of whatever you have, throw it on.
Mhm.
It's very much more medieval peasant mentality.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm not a
I did
fan
like-
of Brewdog being in there though, but yeah.
I did like the other meme of the hoodie and how the
Yes.
the peasant the peasant has always worn the hoodie
What?
to hide his
Their
deformed
mal-
face and head.
And malformed skulls, yeah.
And I guess the final point on that is kind of the sexual ethics that we have are very much, I feel, are more pagan than they are Christian nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, is it possible to have ethics about that aren't either Christian or pagan? I don't know.
Well, paganism devolved into Christianity anyway, so we seem to
But-
just be in a more we seem to have civilized the world, got the experiment wrong, and now
Well-
we're on decivilizing a bit.
The greatest tradition for pagans is to convert to Christianity.
But the way that pagans and Christians approached like sex and marriage and everything is very different. Like, it's extremely different, and they're
Yeah.
total opposites.
Well, yeah, I mean, but we're going through the kind of neo-pagan experiment now, if you want to put it that way. Well, I guess we'll call it the atheist experiment if you're, and it just doesn't seem to be working. Maybe that I'm not being funny. I'm seeing more and more people my age in church than I did like 2 years ago. Like seriously, this year alone, the church I've been going to in Wales, I've seen probably 5 men my age now. Some of them with either their wives or girlfriends. It's like that. I'm not being funny. I think people are noticing, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
So I think I think the next 5 years are going to be such a vibe shift overall. I think it's going to be an almost unrecognisable world, almost.
So, just a few. We're at nearly the end now.
Yeah.
Just a few final points to sort of think about.
Mhm.
So our education system is obviously the Prussian system.
Yeah.
Which was designed by the Prussian state, I assume.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
churn out soldiers and or factory workers.
Yep.
You know, the sort of times, strict times of the day, the bells,
Mhm.
things split up like that,
Oof.
is designed for mass producing good male citizens.
Cogs, if you will. Yeah.
It's never supposed to work for girls, as when it was
Mhm.
first invented, and it's been sort of mutilated to make it fit girls.
Mhm.
And now it doesn't really work for anyone, but girls are doing a bit better than boys.
Yeah. I can
Birth
see that.
control is a whole other thing to talk about.
Has it been good overall?
Even despite it and it obviously allows women to choose when they get pregnant, which means that there is even less need for men around because they don't need to be looked after during the sort of vulnerable pregnancy era. There's all sorts of side effects, and the amount of girls that I know my own age with long-term chronic illnesses or like
Yeah.
things wrong with them is just insane. Like
I mean, that's men too.
it's
Chronic
basically,
illnesses are insane. The
I
spike over the past
I know
50 years.
it's particularly with girls. There's only very few girls I know my own age who actually don't have something pretty badly wrong with them.
Yeah.
And it's across countries. You know, it's not just in
Yeah,
in
it's
England.
everywhere. Mhm.
I mean, there's other theories about estrogen in the water supply from the amount of women on the pill and peeing, and not getting filtered out.
I have not
But
heard that.
yeah, the thing with the pill things is a lot of these like things that we're sort of looking at, they're happening in countries where they don't really have the pill either.
Sure.
But yeah, but then it's everything. There's chemicals in food, and then just stress and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so
It
many
also
things,
means
yeah.
that any form of birth control just inevitably means that there will be
Yeah.
fewer babies.
Yeah.
So there's even less need for sort of actual femininity. Dating apps were originally made for gay men. We haven't even
Yeah.
talked about gay men really in this. We've talked quite a lot about how marriages and dating used to work, and it's nothing like that.
Yeah.
Why gay men? Like, what's the gay man problem?
Well, the discussion around like we talked about women setting trends for each other,
Right.
and status amongst women. I mean, all the fashion trends are set by gay men.
Are they?
Yeah, the fashion
don't know.
industry.
Yeah.
The fashion industry
Right.
is dominated by gay men. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why was that never
And,
true? Why was that kind of never true in the past? I know you couldn't be openly gay, but
Well, yeah, that.
surely
Yeah.
surely there'd be gay men about.
Well,
though.
there wasn't much of a fashion industry.
Yeah.
I
Well, yeah,
suppose.
it was just for the nobility as well.
Fashion is fashion, and like you wear what some woman's made you.
Fair enough.
Also, like with the dating apps, like we were saying before, you've got a choice of like the men in your village, whereas the dating apps now make every woman think that, oh, I'm only going to settle for the 8 out of 10s because they
I mean,
see so many
yeah,
on the dating apps.
it messes everything up in terms of
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. You're no longer limited to a village. You're limited to a large geographic area, and it's anyone with a smartphone. So that makes it difficult for individuals in general. What else did I have? Okay, so finally, I guess, women don't hate men. They hate the result of society that men brought about.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, you don't hate feminism, you hate the Industrial Revolution.
Uh,
I think some of them also. I don't think they're. I think they also hate the sort of Andrew Tate men, though.
They wouldn't exist without.
well,
yeah, which is the result of it. But yeah.
It's a pendulum swinging backwards and
Yeah.
forwards. Like
Mhm.
that's a result of that, which is a result of that, which is a result of that, which is the result of the Industrial Revolution.
Well, I don't blame them for that hate, though.
do we need to move to a post-industrial
Well,
world?
I have no solutions. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I think another thing is that women need a community, which they are very much not getting.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Well, they're finding it online more and more these days.
It's better for especially when there are children involved. There needs to be geographic.
Oh yeah, village to raise a child. Yeah, I get that.
Exactly. There needs to be a actual face to face because a baby can't use Discord or whatever. Not that women are talking in Discord, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And men really don't understand any of this in general. It's not something that we think about.
It is, yeah. We really are rediscovering that men are from Mars and women are from Venus, despite as much as they've tried to for the past, well, I guess since World War II. Like, oh no, you know, the gender communism, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah, and this is I've tried to keep as much sort of ideological leftism out of this.
Yeah, no, I get you.
That is a whole other thing.
Well, hell, some of this. At the end of the day, the Industrial Revolution was a right wing. Was the result of right wing governments, really? Just.
Oh, I'd say it was the result of men tinkering in their shed.
It was the result of autistic men.
Yeah.
Well, they are typically very right wing.
Women were quite happy. Women were quite happy to be farmers' wives.
And what you said about I don't have a solution. That's the other thing, because a lot of these people who talk about having a solution, you're just going back to the same problems of having the state come and try and fix everything. It's what they want, but that's kind of the problem.
Like, I mean, maybe you could try and structure your own relationship around.
That's all you can really do. Yeah.
A village life. You know, maybe you work from home. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know.
But yeah, a big fix to society. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't really see.
Basically, it sounds like I don't know. Well, why didn't churches in urban areas work out for women? I guess would be my question. Because that, you know, as we say, that's where the community mostly is. I imagine women. I'd be interested to know, actually. I take it women's mental health is better in rural areas than it is in urban areas.
I think it depends on if they are integrated with the community or not.
Like you were saying about that woman who just has a duck.
Yeah.
Fair,
I mean,
fair. Yeah.
Although I think if that was Tash, she'd be quite happy.
Oh, Tosh would be very happy. Yeah. That's why I can't show her that advert. Yeah, I mean, well, I'd be happy if me and Tosh just had some land and she'd be happy with a horse. I mean, if that's her community, just a whole load of horse, and it's basically like the animals of farming wood to her, I don't really mind. I mean, do you reckon this is part of the problem? Like, I guess men were working so hard they couldn't do what they could to keep their women happy, maybe. Or they thought they were keeping them happy, but would actually do it in the wrong way.
Well, it's probably more along the lines of, I'm working myself to the bone to put a roof over your head, let's stop complaining.
Japan's really bad with this, with their work culture. And you see how their society's just completely crumbled.
I think the stuff that I've talked about here kind of gets at something that is missed by sort of hard ideologies. Like, I try to keep as much ideology out of this.
I've hated ideology in general for about 4 years now. You know, I used to be like, oh, I've got to be libertarian. That's clearly the best one. And it's like, no, not necessarily. Just, I mean, I'm sure you've said it, Jules. I can't remember how you phrased it exactly, but basically, can we just be normal? It's what we plead, and too many people find it too difficult.
Well, the sort of people having conversations like this on the internet are sort of not being selective for normality.
Yeah. I mean, we try our best to be normal, but none of us are. I don't know, maybe LM is. But,
what?
We can. Never mind. Well, you're on this Discord, you're probably not normal, but still.
I think maybe it might be
borderline.
The issue with being sort of how to be a traditional man is basically it's illegal.
Yes.
For women, it might be easier if you live around your family. I'm not sure.
Well,
like for men, it's off the table without serious change.
There's
society at large, but that's fine because that's how men have always done things.
Well, I'm trying to think back as well to like Victorian era men, because I'm trying to think what Gladstone did in his adventuring days, or Disraeli, and I know Disraeli got. Well, he was helping. Well, yeah, he was a missionary actually. I don't know if he went abroad, but he was an evangelical. Disraeli basically lived off his like inheritance. Wrote a couple of books, wrote a few poems, and then just went into politics for status, and then married a rich woman so that he could scrounge a bit more. He was a proper scrounger, Disraeli. I'm not even joking. But he was never seen as like not a man, and I guess this is the problem with being a man. Like not you've kind of got three classes of them. You got the noble, if you want to go put it in the feudal way. You got the noble types who will sometimes be warriors, will sometimes though be the administrators. The
noble is a warrior class.
Yeah.
So that's always
sure.
been okay.
But then you've got the priests who are definitely not a warrior class, but they're a studious scribe class. And then you've got the workers that are obviously the, how's it put in Kingdom Come? Like they work the fields and pay their taxes. They're basically dum-dums. But they do fight.
It's not that they're like happy to do it. It's just all they're really good for.
It's survival. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they don't do it out of happiness, but they don't have a choice.
Well,
Although I have heard from the distant right that that's not true, and it was only 10 days of work a year, and the rest was frolicking through the fields.
Well, do you know how many holy days they had? Yeah, okay, that means that they didn't have to go to the field and instead were fixing their the tears they had in their
You've got
hoes.
work. Yeah.
I mean, it's why I like Kingdom Come Deliverance so much. Early part of that game before you I mean, obviously you can min max it, but they made a hardcore mode for it, so it makes it harder to like cheese the game. But when you start that game off, you have to almost like steal everything because there's so little opportunity to actually work. Your village got burned down, but then as you work more and do more of the quests for effectively being a servant to your lord, you end up with of stuff like horse and armor and what have you. And as it turns out, that's only happened to you because you're the bastard son of the lord. So yeah, it's but that'd be most people would never even dream of owning a horse unless they worked on a horse farm, and even then they'd still be peasants and they'd be deep in horse muck every day.
Yeah. And
breaking
and livestock is livestock do not care about your holy days.
Yeah,
they need work every day.
Well, as Jesus said to the Jews at the time, like you say you can't work, you still feed your animals. So yeah. But yeah,
that's all I've got. That's all I wrote.
I mean, you say that's all, but I think you certainly got into this much better than anyone else I've seen talk about feminism. And yeah, I certainly used to be a lot more feminism is doo-doo type in my thinking.
Because you didn't know any girls.
I wouldn't know about that.
Yeah.
But well, no, I think I'm just understanding them better. I mean, as you said throughout this, men just don't understand women. Women just don't understand men. Or they understand them to an extent because we're more similar than we are different, sure. But the differences are just so alien to each other that
it's
we can't really account
it's
for it.
Mindset. It's all the little jokes that men tell each other and women tell each other and have done for all time.
Yeah, and
I do feel the push from both men and women. This sort of you see a lot these days. Who just this war between us, I think, is just that's got to be some sort of psyop that people have fallen for.
Well,
it's USAID, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, it's just these men and women who sort of fall for this like battle over feminism. And it just makes them start hating each other.
Feminists are idiots. Like that's all I need to land on, really. Like, okay, maybe they have some good points, but it's not points that they exclusively make. And a lot of people who maybe find decent problems, the solutions aren't good.
Yeah, I compare it to communism because a lot of
not to get ideological, but
a lot of modern feminists are trying to find solutions to problems that existed 100 years ago.
You mean answers that we had 100 years ago?
Well, or even because communists, even like Jeremy Corbyn, banging on about the workers, quote unquote, when that's just not a thing anymore.
Yeah,
no, it's not. I keep having to I say it all the time, but poverty basically doesn't exist anymore. Like,
and it's the same as women complaining about a sort of male-dominated society. Like,
no.
Well, that's basically that's not been true for
Like,
years.
It
Really.
was.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it unequivocally was, and I
Yeah,
understand that women at the time
Well,
were stripped of everything that they'd had.
well, even then, like, as Jordan Peterson puts it in his 12 Rules for Life, it's like, well, at the end of the day, though, yeah, sure, men dominated society, but what were they doing it for? Effectively, to protect women as best they could.
Well, they're missing this whole under society that women had. It's not like
Yeah,
I remember ages ago thinking maybe there was an issue when we went from community to society as a sort of primary
yeah,
And
organizational mode. And
even at the top level of society, the kings and nobles, their wives would have some influence over them still in policies and stuff.
yeah,
They'd be talking, they'd be talking at night and stuff. That would often have an
well,
effect.
if it's to believe, if that story about Alfred the Great's to be believed, like England was created because of a woman nagging a man.
there's again. I had a screenshot from a TV show called Outlander that is
Yeah.
a very
I didn't need
funny.
to watch that.
It's a very funny insight into the female psyche. It's a lot of it is like femgoon content, but it's it's funny.
Right.
And there's a part of that where the woman's main character's husband is like a lord,
Mhm.
and she's from a different time period. So it's like a time travel thing, and
Yeah,
she
yeah.
sort of questions his judgment in public on some
Mm.
decision he's made as lord of the manor,
Mm.
and he's obviously like aghast. And he literally has this conversation with her later, like, do not ever do that to me in public. If you have a problem with something that I'm doing, tell me in private.
Yeah.
And obviously she's pissed off about that, but then he's like, no, seriously, the lord of that manor over there that you've been staying with previously has the same with his wife, and like I can hear her throwing things at him in the small hours of the morning because he's
Mhm.
done something that she doesn't like, but it's all in private.
Yeah.
I know. With Harold Goodwinson after Stamford Bridge, his wife was advising him to wait, gather up more of the army, but he was in the tricky position of, well, William is destroying and killing everyone. I can't really wait.
Mhm.
But even in like something like that, like war and stuff,
I
they're
really-
still
Yeah,
like the Queen is still having some influence there.
I really like Cromwell's a really good film for it as well, actually showing the influence women actually have over the men in power, because obviously it's Cromwell versus Charles I, and Charles I is basically trying to avoid a civil war at all costs, and his wife's like, no, you got to like go in and beat him, like screw Parliament. Why you? She's French, obviously.
Yeah, that's the mistake.
Like, why are you letting them say this about you? It's like, well, otherwise we're at war, and I'm already at war with the Scots, and they're destroying Northumbria and what have you. And Cromwell's obviously
It's only the north.
well, quite. But yeah, then Cromwell's obviously getting really annoyed with his land being taken by the king for requisition for to keep the Scots out of the north, and then the church has changes because Charles I is a bit Catholic, so wants a bit of gold, and he's getting annoyed at that. And
I want my church to be proper boring.
yeah, and
That's Cromwell.
His wife is basically telling him to calm down for like the scenes where he's at home, but he's like, oh no, I can't calm down, I've got to go. But it's like okay, so they didn't really listen to their wives, but in private they will give their opinion on things, and it is probably worth listening to.
And just because in these cases they didn't, that doesn't mean other cases with countless other men they didn't.
Yeah. I mean, back in the medieval time, if you're in a tavern, a man was a bit drunk and he slapped a woman's arse, he'd probably get a slap in the face, and like everyone would probably think he deserved it. Like, there's never really been a time of proper chauvinism.
This was another thing that I was thinking of, because in like Victorian pubs, I was looking for a photograph of men in pubs. I think it was this one here. And there were so many like modern reenactment black and white photos of people in pubs, and there's loads of women in the Victorian pubs, and I swear women weren't really allowed in pubs.
Well, they'd have I think there'd be like male only rooms, which I think would typically be the smoking room. Pubs were the main room of pubs were mostly run by women, for God's sake. You know how the pub came about?
Public house, yeah.
Yeah, it came from a public house because you'd have these brewers and the brewers would mostly be women because, you know, there's some heavy lifting at best, you know, to move the barrels. That's all the men would do, but putting all the ingredients together and actually keeping an eye on it would be mostly done by the women, and then, you know, they'd serve it in their own house, and that's where the public house would came from.
Oh, right.
So, you know, women would actually be running these places as well, quite a lot of the time.
It's the brewer and his wife.
Yeah. And the brewer would, you know, the man would mainly be doing the heavy lifting. The woman would be
It's
more the
his
recipe.
brewery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, no, it's a bit of a like there were men only spaces in pubs, absolutely, but there will have been clubs that were men only as well. But no, a lot of, especially working to middle class type public houses, no, they were quite mixed. Victorian times.
All right.
Well, throughout time.
I'm going to call it there.
Are you? Okay, that's fair.
I was just going to finish off with the meme about how probably the only reason we're not still living in caves is because men wanted to please women.
Well, it's that funny thing, isn't it? Because even then, like, what is the ideal man's apartment? It's a 6-pack of beer, it's a deck chair, and it's a decent TV with a PS5 or whatever.
And then women go, "How can men live like this?"
Yeah, and then women civilise them. It's like you got all this money, you spend it all on this, like it's all just sitting in an account somewhere. You know, maybe it's in investments, but you know, you can actually live in a house that makes you feel good. I mean, thinking about the house I'm in now, like, is Tash pushing to decorate it all?
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Which, you know, women are
Yeah, well,
artists,
I sent you a photo of my dinner the other day, and you were like, "Are you in a medieval pub?" Like, no, this is my home. I live in it.
I think I said an Irish cottage.
Oh yeah. It's like, no, this is my flat.
Oh,
it just looks like that.
Yeah. And I take it that was mostly Kirby's choice. Yeah, I mean, that will have been the same throughout history. Like, women will have been making the choice of how the home worked. You know, when maybe not in medieval times when it was all practical as it could be, but you know, if you had a cross somewhere, the women would have decided where it goes. Anyway, as you say, we'll end it there. So, right, thank you very much, chat, for being very involved. Obviously, thank you very much, Joz, for putting this together.
Well, it's just, as I say, it's just my thoughts that I'd had.
No, I would say that this is one of our better TOSH talks. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, Tharium, for coming along as well.
As always.
And thank you, LM, for your debut appearance.
You're welcome.
Very good. Right, shill time. No more streams for me this week, I think. There might be a gaming one again, I don't know yet. Videos out as and when I can make them. Obviously, they're pretty much daily now, and it's nice, lovely slop content, so go to my channel for that. Obviously, I should have said this at the beginning. We do have Super Chats open on this channel, but it's probably a bit late for that. And then, yeah, you can become a member as well. That's all down in the description. Do join the Discord, etc. Next Monday, Antiquity again. Next Tuesday, it is TOSH News. I'll get a panel together for that, and we'll go through the ridiculous news stories of the week. Right, I think that's everything, so I've thanked everyone. So, subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time,